sit outside, catch the biggest wave, ride it all the way to the beach and be like, all right. So, I think that like being around people like that was truly insane, and having access to time phones. Like I didn't know what was going on. I was like using pay phones to do stuff, and like you would just be at the beach all day. Nobody was looking at their phone or nobody had like hear stories from people and getting lost down weird dirt roads and finding magical waves. And it was like, there was like a romance in that time that I feel excited for the kids now because everything's so quick. And also kind of like there is something I think that, I would hope that they can go places without being plugged in and they can kind of tune out.
That's the hope. I mean, because they're missing out otherwise. There was something cool about just being dropped off at the beach, not having access to your parents or anyone, other than a payphone, and you had to figure shit out on your own, and you couldn't Google it, and you had to talk to people or ask, and like those were ways you learned to get by, but also it made you a better human in some ways because you learned how to connect to people.
And read a map or follow your intuition more.
Exactly. Figure it out without Googling it.
Figure it out for sure.
You're like connected to these really intangible things, and the sensibility that you gain as a young person is it's invaluable.
Yeah. Back in my day.
Yeah, no, that's what I hope for the kids, because I see everybody looking down a lot, and it's like, man, life's happening. So I don't know. I hope that with this last year, it gave people an opportunity to kind of be like, you know what, like I can get away from this a little bit more, and like what's really important, and you're seeing that, like it's like the trails, the lineup, the beaches. Busier than I've ever seen them in my life in this last year. It's cool to see that happening.
How are you negotiating the crowds, by the way? Are you because there is some pushback from some surfers with a lot of the crowds that have been happening in the lineups, and how to deal with it. How have you been managing that and keeping a positive attitude? So I think a lot of our listeners could look for some sort of inspiration here.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's like anything. It's like surfing is the best thing ever, which is why we all do it. And the fact that, like, I know for me it's medicine. Like, I don't know about you guys, I'm sure it is, but like, it is. Yeah, right? It's medicine. You're just like, dude, I'm having a bad day. I feel funky. You go surfing, you feel better.
I'm a better person when I get home. I say to my wife, I got to go. And she's like, you go.
Yeah. She's like, I already packed you a lunch. Get out of here.
She tells me to go.
I come home and I'm like, sweetheart, I'll do anything. What do you want me to do?
Exactly.
That's it. So I think if people are smiling and people are getting kind of like an access to the nature medicine, then the world's going to be a better place. So,
Agreed.
It's like, instead of just like, I mean, we all were learning at some point. So if it's crowded and maybe somebody's like in a precarious position, I just might be like, okay, like that's like not the best place for you to sit, and maybe come over here and see this. I'll give people a couple little tips that usually help. And I think that that's way more empowering, number one, and supportive for everybody in the water, rather than like yelling at somebody. I mean, sometimes things happen and you're in a bad place. That said, like, I mean, if you can empower somebody with like a little 1 and 2, because the guy at the surf shop that sold him the board isn't giving him that, so it's like, give them a little heads up. And I think that people are like, oh my God, I didn't know. Thank you so much. And you're like, yeah, like.
Well, it's a little different as a white male to go try to tell maybe a woman or someone like, hey, maybe don't sit here because I don't want to mansplain either.
Yeah,
it's like a very fine line of like, I find trying to give instruction and help people is a very fine line. And it's not just women, it's men too. Like everyone can be a little like kind of fragile sometimes. I have a difficult time sometimes trying to toe that line without seeming like I'm trying to be mansplaining or trying to be condescending either.
I feel like I always want more people surfing. The more people that surf, the better the world will be. I don't know. I actually believe that. Even though
It's
like
what's up.
honestly, I get really upset like when it's really crowded, but then I think about it, I'm like, well, it's small and these people are learning and they're trying to enjoy this
Mm-hmm.
thing and I love this thing. I hope they can enjoy it as well. And luckily where I am right now, like obviously Travelers channels things, but like if it's on and it's critical and you can get hurt, there's like people can't get out. It's just giant
Yeah.
beach break. They're not going to get out. So like you don't even have
I
to worry
always
about
say scale is the greatest filter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I'm not saying that in an elitist way. It's just like, on the big days, I know that I'm going to get my waves,
yeah.
and I know that I won't have to be a teacher. I can be a participant.
Mm-hmm.
It's
But what I'm saying is it's in my court to navigate a crowded lineup when it's small because they're learning, I think. And like you're saying, I think it's good to actually tell people like, hey, like with a smile, like
Yeah.
come over here, I'll root you into one, but like don't sit there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Or give them some pointers on the beach,
Yeah.
some little things but going back to kind of what you were saying, Tyler, like I actually like really, I mean, part of kind of like my energy work and stuff is like really, having learned like kind of Gestalt ways of communicating and like different kind of like nonviolent communication and stuff like that. I actually ask people if they're available for some feedback and if they would want it before I go into it. Because then it opens people up. You're like, hey, do you want some like support? Do you want a couple like I can kind of give you more of the ways of the lineup. And then people are like, oh my God, really? Yeah. So I'm like, are you available for feedback? Like,
There we go.
would this be helpful? And then people are like, it usually like changes it, and then it doesn't feel like you're, being condescending or.
So you find the first person who's been destroyed in the impact zone and you paddle up to them and you say, would you like a little bit of help?
People are like, please, I feel like I'm like drowning over here, and most of the time people are like, oh my God, thank you so much. Because people are freaking intimidated out there.
Yeah.
A lot of people are intimidated, but then they don't want to look like they know what they're doing. So then they kind of get like,
scary.
It's like a lot of stuff is happening in the water. So I think that's helpful.
Take it for granted. I think we take it for granted that there are like these like unwritten rules, right? There's a pecking order. There is experience. There's a skill. There's kind of like, I also notice a lot of times that there are people out there who have a sensibility to, like you mentioned before, you're like, oh, the wind shifts, and you're like, oh, and you have that kind of like internal sensibility that like things are happening in the water and you get it. And there are some people who just don't get it. You're like, there's a rip current over there, and there's, there's so much happening out there that you need to help people sometimes,
Yeah.
I also think there's a lot of unlearning a lot of us older surfers have to do on our attitudes, and how we react to certain things. I had a recent incident, where I was surfing. It was a small day. It was just fun. And this learner was paddling into a wave that I was on, and I'm like, yo, yo, yo. And then the board kind of shot out and hit me in the board, and I panicked, and I reacted in a more angry way at first. But then dude, it's there's a fight or flight reaction, if you feel threatened, but then I started talking to the person, and it was just this wonderful woman who is just intimidated and frustrated, and it's been a tough year, and she was so nice, and the way she handled me was incredible. She was just so patient and calm, and then I calmed, and we had this wonderful conversation, and it made me realize, like, God, I don't want to react that way, but it's like almost this knee-jerk reaction because we grew up getting harassed by older surfers. If you got in the way and you have this kind of learned behavior,
that's true. There was a price
to
pay. If you took a misstep, there was a price to pay, and you were put in your place, and that's how you learned. There was
toxic masculinity, man.
Pretty much.
Serious. It's pervasive in surfing. It's pervaded for so long, and we have to really get all that stuff out of our system, I think.
Yeah,
I agree.
There's a whole new into the water. It's a whole different lineup. It's a whole different crew of people. It's not just like a bunch of frothy groms that are just that. And, people that are just like coming into surfing at a later point in time in their life. And like, it's a whole different, the water is like a far different place than it used to be. And I think too, it's like giving people like a couple, tips is going to be better for everybody out there.
I also think the surf club model is a great way to indoctrinate people into surfing and teach them and make them feel part of the community. And instead of ostracizing beginners and like making them feel separate, I think the clubs are a great way to bring more experienced surfers and novices together and share experience and share the knowledge and the culture and all that.
I'm so sorry. I think my dog is stuck behind something. I'll be right back. I just heard her. I was 1 second.
Or we can pause.
We should go to rapid fire soon. Rapid fire questions.
Yeah, go for it. I'm going to let you lead that.
Best at this. So Chris is going to do this.
What's that?
What?
Chris is doing it.
The rapid fire questions on the clock. You're doing this.
Oh, I'll do it.
Yeah. You're good at it.
All right. I like it.
We were talking about those little kids, in the water the other day, like just kind of cool it is. I was out there surfing a huge swell and Corey Lopez was out with his kid. Kid's like 8. And I'm sitting there looking at him like, I'm not going. I'm just tired. And like, we're down along like Long Beach Island. It's a huge swell. And like, this kid is like in the worst spot possible. And he just paddles for it. And his dad's hooting him like, why is he doing that? And the kid's like, I'm in on this thing, just like, get down. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I just felt like, wow, like this little kid's like 8 and he took that on the head. I wouldn't have. Oh, this little pup.
Oh, hola, perrito.
Sorry, this is my 16-year-old Shiva who's like blind and kind of deaf. She can see a little bit still.
Hello.
But not totally. And she, I was like, wait, was that a Luca? And sometimes at night, she'll get stuck behind like planters.
Yeah.
And she can't get out. And she's 16, she's still raging. But I just heard her and I was like, oh yeah, she was stuck between a tree and a planter. It was a tough lot. And I kind of was like, couldn't hear because I have these like noise cancelers on. I was like, I think that was just her. My spider senses.
Good job. My neighbor had a dog that was about 16 and was blind for the last few years, and it's just really difficult. Like
it's a lot of maintenance.
Such a struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like constant kind of like re-navigation to like get her and make sure she's cool. And it's weird. Like some days, like she'll be super chill, and then other days she's just like getting stuck every 5 minutes. So she's just, she's partying though. She eats well.
All right.
Yeah. So yes, I'm sorry to have cut you off. She was stuck and she just needed my help.
Well, this is cool for a cool segue. Before we get to like something we talked about before, I'm really interested in this because it's a place that's very, very dear to me. I want to know more about your Keep Abreast your involvement with Keep Abreast Foundation. I read a little bit about how your mom had breast cancer. My mom had breast cancer.
Mine too.
And my mom is 80 years old and she's a 30-year cancer survivor. And I do what I can do to I do a lot of swim-a-thons for cancer, and I was just kind of I was touched. I was really touched to know a little bit more about what you're doing with Keep Abreast Foundation.
Absolutely. So thank you, and it's so everybody, I feel like to some degree, whether you're a woman or man, obviously we all have mothers, and everybody's mother at some point most likely has dealt with breast cancer. And most people have dealt with breast cancer, whether it's their mother or their sister or a partner, to some degree. And I think it's just like growing need for support. And when Keep Abreast started was 20 years ago, which is the same year that my mother was diagnosed. And luckily, with the medical world being where it is right now, they diagnosed it early and she was okay. Oh, honey, my little dog. She's like confused. I'm going to put you down.
Who are these people on the screen?
Yeah.
So, and I think like what Keep Abreast is doing is they're really talking about like early detection, self checks, and early prevention. And they're